Welcome to the Fountain with Ellie Thomas. The fountain is an image that I use in my work often to speak of our multidimensionality, to connect with the life, the living water flowing within us through mind, body, spirit, heart, and all. This show is a place where we explore it all, where we tap into wisdom that has surfaced through pain and joy and the fullness of our journeys. This podcast is a place to come and remember, to sink back into the living water that flows within you and to be guided back to your fountain, your fullness, your wholeness, and how to be with that as we navigate living as divine humans in this wild, wild world and this wild, wild journey. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in together and be refreshed and consoled by the water that wants to flow through. Hello. Welcome back to the fountain. I'm so glad to be with you today. Join me if you want to in just taking a really nice big breath into your body and releasing through your mouth. No matter where you are, no matter what you're moving with and moving through, it's important to take these moments to return to ourselves, and that's always what I hope your time listening to the fountain is all about and what I'm here for. I have some big, beautiful updates that I want to share with you before I share some of the stirrings of my mind and heart that have been kind of cultivating a clear message for you on some things. So the first is that next week, the third week of May, the membership that I have been telling you about is opening. The doors will be opening. There will be a special joining deal through the end of May if you are ready to join. I'm really excited for you to feel into it. This is a membership that, truthfully, the idea began stirring in November or December, I think November, around my birthday in 2021. And so it has taken many forms over the years energetically, and as I've evolved and changed, and I was not at all in a place to be able to offer this yet at that time, but the seeds were planted, and everything that's forming is just so beautiful. There will be multiple live community calls a month where I will be leading different processes, and there will also be an option to upgrade for small group mentorship and to have access to working with me through, the things that are happening in your life. And I could not be more excited to just share this beautiful place that I have been stewarding and working with, and that has been unfolding and preparing itself for you for many years, and more recently in the past few months. And there have been so many versions of it, and it has just kept refining, and it has been such an incredible process to see how that refining happens and to feel into, and every new layer of refinement, it feels so good and so right, and there's so much clarity in it, and I'm just so excited to welcome you in. If you love the podcast, if you listen and you work with the ideas and material and explorations that I offer here, you will love this membership. It is created as a place to kind of bring all of this into practice and bring all of it into your body and into playful, creative exploration, and to receive guidance around just whatever is moving with you, and guidance around being in the process of sacred tending with yourself and your life, and through that connecting with these, what wants to happen, these portals for transformation, these portals for shifts, the invitations that are alive in what you are living and what it's asking you to engage with. And I always trust and believe that when we engage with our lives and ourselves these ways, like new doors open within, new energy releases, there's more access to more of our life force and our life flow, and more access to just being in greater capacity to move not only with the things that we desire to experience in our life, but also to move with our pain. And then through that, there's even more liberation that comes. So this is an ongoing process that I have been living hardcore for the past 5 years, and a little lighter before, even for a few years before that. And I'm just so excited to create a place to invite you to come and land and come and be exactly as you are, and to come and sink into these processes and not be alone, and to find just like a sense of, we are all individual, and also to be held in a community and to be able to share, with others and to receive from others. And what a beautiful, beautiful experience it will be. So keep your eyes tuned. I can't wait to share. I think I already dropped the name of it in my email list. So if you're on the email list, you can go snooping for that. But I'm going to hold it sacred to my heart for now on the podcast, but I will be back with more information soon. And very similar, it feels like very aligned to do these things together. I am recording my so far life story. Obviously, life stories continue and much is to come. And also, I have been working for a year to try and figure out how to share the fullness of my story with you in a way that feels like you won't just get all lost and tangled up in it, and like, what is going on, confused. I say that because last summer my friend Melina came to visit, and she's the first person that I've ever like sat down and from beginning to end like shared the fullness of the journey that has been the first 35 years of my life with. And it took a long time. Thankfully, we were on a long drive, and there were so many details and so many relevant parts, and it all weaves together in such a potent way. And I didn't want to leave anything out for you, because one thing impacts the next, and so on and so on. And also trying to find all of the words to paint the picture of just what the tremendous power of things that I have moved through, and just to share my heart with you has felt challenging. So I've been meditating on for a while, like, how can I share my journey fully in a way that's like coherent and cohesive and really like illuminating and not overwhelming for me and not confusing for anyone listening or anyone engaging with it. And a few months ago, I kind of came up with these 4 arcs. And so I am practicing sharing that, and I am recording the kind of 4 arcs of my journey, and then the point where they all kind of collide and come together, which happened in my late 20s. And then after I share that episode with you, by the way, this episode is the 20th episode. So this is so great. It's so exciting. This is the 20th episode of the podcast, not including the bonus meditations. And over these next, in the early 20s, there will be new shows that will be sharing the fullness of my journey, so you can know me on a greater level and also just receive the reflections and the wisdom that's there. And then my sister, my in real life little sister, is going to come in and interview me. She has her own vision. She's somebody that's watched this whole process and watched a lot of the things that have happened through, my history with my mom, and then my mom's death, and all sorts of other things. And so there will be space for her to like just ask me questions and for us to dive into it together, which I'm really looking forward to. And I feel so grateful. She actually works in the podcasting world. She is one of the producers for the REI podcast, Wild Ideas Worth Living. So go check that out if you're into like outdoors and kind of connection with nature and the world and doing really fun, cool things. So anyways, I'm excited and really grateful to have another podcast person that can really not only witness me, but also like pick out some more things to share with you and just to let you see the greater picture. So what I want to talk about today is viewing life as a portal for transformation. And this has been on my mind because I have been kind of working with the way that I talk about and see and present my work and present what it is that I do. And I know for a lot of people, it might feel so vast that it's hard to connect with. And for other people, you might connect with part of it, but not know how other parts really move with each other. And as I've been like working with, how do I kind of streamline the way that I talk about these things? How do I streamline the way that I talk about grief? How do I streamline the way I talk about like our authentic energy and recovering pieces of ourselves or retapping into our soul and living from a heart-centered place? How do I talk about kind of the bridges of divine and human interminglings in our life and all of these pieces and parts that are so full and clear within me, but maybe not on the outside? And as I've been sitting with all of this phrase has come through where a lot of my work is based in inner mastery, and inner mastery for inner mastery's sake is awesome. And also, I have been led to inner mastery through the engagement with life and the call to engage with life as it is. And therefore, I have tapped into the transformation that is available to me as I have asked for help, received guidance, inward and outward, and moved through for many years these greater openings of my being that have led to a really, to me, it feels like a seismic shift of a transformation in how I feel with myself and inside, how I feel with myself in my body and mind, how I move in connection to myself in the world, how I relate and see others, how I want to be living my life and moving in the world, and the freedom that is alive in all of those places, and also the incredible amount of conscious attention and loving tending that has been cultivated through this process. And so when I talk about sacred tending, liberated expression, I'm always talking about meeting life, meeting what life is bringing up in us, meeting life in the external and in the internal, and moving with it, connecting with it, engaging with it, learning how to deepen into relationship with it, and through that process, receiving the little nuggets of transformation. Sometimes they feel huge and sometimes they feel little. Sometimes they are seen and sometimes they are unseen. Usually they're unseen for a long time until they start to be seen. But engaging with ourselves and with life in this way so that we naturally just continue to evolve into greater connection with ourselves. And through that, we experience this idea of liberated expression. We experience more capacity, more ability to say and speak our truth, for more capacity to move and create what is on our with what is on our hearts, with more ability to release freely what is not ours. And that can be everything from emotion to beliefs to ideas to concepts and ways of life that have been passed to us that are not ours, to fear. All of these places are considered liberated expression for me. And so when I talk about life as a portal for transformation, I'm not talking about seeing like, oh yeah, I have to engage in this so that I can get to the other side in it. I actually find that rich transformation comes from just being with what is here. I have become a master at being with what is here. And that is because I have cultivated a sense of understanding and trust that as I come to what is here and I move. This is what all of my client sessions are. And this is what is naturally through the process instilled in my clients too, is as I come into engagement with what is here, there is something more here, like a mini or a large door to the next step will arrive. But if I just try to get to the next step, I miss so much of the richness. I miss so much of the possibility of the unraveling, of the release, of the human experience that leads to wisdom and also to spaciousness through which we can then experience the next step. So it's almost like walking into room after room after room. And when I say room after room after room, and they're all connected by doors, maybe it's like an endless string of rooms of different shapes, colors, sizes, lights, textures, and there's doorways between all of them. And at first, when we walk in, we cannot see the doorway. We just feel like we are engulfed and stuck. But when we really allow ourselves to sink into where we are and to whatever life experience is moving in this room with us, we can really begin to just feel and be in whatever state is here and be in greater understanding and compassion, in turning towards that and even asking, like, what is the wisdom? What is happening here? What is this guiding me towards? Why am I, oftentimes we can have questions, and especially in hard moments, of like, why am I here? And I have found that the more we can soften in to simply experience the room without trying to get to the next place, when it's time, the door to the next hallway or to the next room makes itself visible and over time begins to open. And sometimes this is a quick moving process. I find that now in my life, this is a fast moving process. Like I can move through multiple doorways, sometimes in a day or in a week. And at the beginning of my process and at the beginning of my sacred tending journey, at the beginning of seeing life as a portal for transformation and trusting what is presenting to me and what's happening within me and being willing to meet that, I would stay in the same room sometimes for weeks on end, because it took me, at that time, I needed to have the spaciousness to be able to come into trust with myself and with what was there, to actually be able to kind of dissolve the walls that I had built up and to not push away and be in resistance of what was there. So much of my early path, especially around grief, was just around beginning to allow my body to calibrate to allowing grief to be here. I had tried to, like, my body, of course, was in correspondence to the grief always, but in my suppression of the grief on a mental level and on a fear level, and also just not having the space to move with it in my heart and being an emotional body and energetic body, I would try and push it away and resist it. And it created a lot of health problems for me, physical health problems. And so much of, I would say almost the entire first year, definitely the first 6 months of my journey was, and when I say journey, I mean like this sacred tending journey and this turning towards, was just beginning to soften slowly, piece by piece, enough to let the natural release of grief happen and the natural movement of being with it and the sensations and the emotions and the energetic qualities of it, for myself to be moving with it little by little in a way that I could handle, in a way that I had capacity for. And this was, for a while, it was like walking into a room and saying like, whoa, naming it for the first time, like, this is anticipatory grief. And then really letting myself stay in this room without trying to find a doorway out. And that's a really important part that I want to mention about seeing life as a portal for transformation, and how sometimes when we say that, if we have a doing to get type of energy, or if we have the sense of, I have to do this so that I get to this place where I want to be, instead of an openness to what life is showing us and giving us, we can show up to something that we are hoping to live, and it won't look how we're wanting it to, or we won't actually have the capacity to be with it. And so part of seeing life as a portal for transformation is forgetting about the transformation part and just engaging with life as it is. And that is what sacred tending is all about. Sacred tending comes with this innate trust that as I open myself to just be with what is here, whatever is meant to happen will happen. And that's really scary because it means it's already challenging our relationship to uncertainty. It's already opening us to see uncertainty in a different way. It's already taking things out of our control. Like we have to slow down enough to sacred tend to not be trying to control the outcome of what will happen. I, as a practitioner, never know exactly where somebody will be on the other side, but I can usually sense into energetically like, this is the place where we're being led, but we're only going to get there if we really settle in and move through with what's here right now. And when I'm sharing about grief, sometimes I wonder, what is it like for somebody that either has moved through grief stuff before or hasn't? Because the way that I now see grief is very similar to this. Grief brings us into such sacred, potent connection with life. And also, when you're in the middle of the beginning of a grief journey, it does not feel that way. And I now see in the long arc of grief, arc absolutely is a portal for transformation. And engaging with death and engaging with loss and engaging with how it's changing us is one of the most potent portals for transformation. And at the same time, in order to trust and be fully in the process and to receive what's there for you, we have to forget about the transformation part. Like we cannot walk into a grief thing and to a grief situation and to a grief portal and be like, well, if I walk through this, I'll be transformed. So here I go. In my experience, it doesn't quite work that way. We learn as the layers of the grief hit more, very similar to the born through grief process that I've talked about in another podcast. So go back and listen if you're interested in that. But really, it's about just letting go of where we're trying to get and bring the intention towards what is happening now and softening into that, approaching that, tending to that, being with that, opening our capacity, opening our willingness, opening our heart to feel, move with, and receive what's here right now. And as we do that, whatever's meant to happen will happen. And part of this also means releasing timelines and releasing the sense of when things will be okay. I was just reflecting this morning on, the ways that grief has impacted my marriage and impacted the way we live and have needed to live the last 3 years in order to be in our own natural transformation after losing my mom, and the ways that grief has impacted our lives, and how even though I have felt in such a beautiful place with myself and my grief for at least maybe even a year now, and it changes every month and every season, my husband and I are just arriving to a new space together right after the 3-year mark. I remember when we were naive still, and my mom had just died. My dad, my sister, my husband, and I had gone on this trip to California, and my husband and I drove to a town that I wanted to visit for the day to have a little date. And we were just a couple weeks out from my mom's death. And this is like, everything was so new, and I was still so much in shock, which I just didn't know at the time, but I do now. And I remember us talking about the relief of just everything that tending to somebody that has cancer or that is moving with a terminal illness or is sick, having the relief of that part being gone was really alive, even though the reality of what that meant of not having my mom here hadn't really, settled in fully yet. And we were just talking about the spaciousness that was open and like kind of in the relief, being able to tap into dreams we've had for a long time that didn't feel possible because we were in a very uncertain time around her health and her life and all those sorts of things. And I now look back at that moment and it's like, oh yeah, I was just at the beginning of this portal and I totally get why I wanted to focus on that. And now I feel like 3 years ago, we're touching back into that place from a way different aspect, from a very much more coherent and full place. And yet the only way to really get here was to release, even though we didn't want to, and even though it was frustrating in many times, to release the timing of what it meant to live some of the things we were talking about out. Because over the next subsequent months, the grief journey for me required a complete pulling back in many ways in my life in order to restore and regain connection and to grieve. And there were so many days after days after days where I thought it would never change. I thought that was maybe what my life would be after that. And of course, I heard other people that were further along the path or that had had experiences that said it would change. But when you're in the middle of it, you really don't know how to connect with the possibility that things might change because the pain is so great. But through the process of tending, of showing up, of allowing myself to meet what was there time and time again, even though it was super uncomfortable for my husband that was happening. It was super uncomfortable for other people in my life, and I didn't really know how to, at the time, invite them in, and they did not always know how to meet me there. Everything that was meant to happen, just of giving it space, but then also arriving where I needed to arrive with time, did. And the only way that we would have gotten to this place of kind of engaging in our dreams and desires for life in a new way with the richness and the fullness and the true embodied desire and hope and belief is through having totally surrendered to the process that I'm speaking mainly for myself, that I needed to live in order to get to this place, to be able to engage in this way, to be able to have the capacity and to be able to really open to a new phase. So when I talk about grief being or life being a portal for transformation, grief is a part of life and death is a part of life. And so they are parts of that. There's also breakups that catalyze things. And oftentimes, I've talked about this before, but oftentimes in our process of engaging in life as a transformational portal, there's a sacred moment or a series of moments or a sacred season that really breaks us down and breaks us open. And in that process, opens us up to be able and potentially, if we decide to engage with what's happening as a transformational kind of catalyst in our life. And yet it doesn't mean that we turn towards life in every moment and just say, how can I transform if I move through this? Because we get to be in the messy process of it all, and in that reap the gifts, reap the riches, reap the wisdom, and receive everything that we need to in order to be built up to meet what's really meant to be part of our path. So this is what's been on my heart. I'd love to hear from you if this just impacts you or shifts anything in you. And I'm so excited to share more on my story and also the membership with you so soon. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for listening to The Fountain. Please take a moment to rate and review the show and to send it along to a friend that comes to heart or mind. I'd also love to hear what came up for you and your experience listening to the most recent episodes. So reach out via your podcast app or send me an email. And if you'd like to book your first session or explore working together more, find me at EllieFlow.com.